Morning. It's Friday, February 11th, and once again we find that the federal government and the states are not on the same page. And this is just a function of the way our government is set up. It's a federalist government, and most of the things, with the exception of like 17 different items, most of the things are controlled by the states. And so there's a constant, what seems to me, a conflict between the states and the federal government. The situation I'm talking about now has to do with the pandemic and the mask mandates. For instance, in New York, the state will end a mandate requiring face coverings, masks, in most indoor public settings, but will keep school masking rules in place. And the governor announced this on Wednesday. And then later on in the same day, the governor of Illinois announced that his state would be doing something very similar to what New York is doing. Now, the latest situation in the mask mandate situation is that many states are doing this because there's a decline in the daily coronavirus infections and the hospitalization number. And that's very important. If the hospitalization number goes down, then these states feel much more confident in doing what they're attempting to do. But the director of the Center for Disease Control, and prevention, of course, said that for now, her agency continues to recommend masking in areas of substantial transmission, which is most of the nation. So these states that are jumping ahead are not having these so-called substantial transmissions. We've seen the way this pandemic has come. So the CDC went on to say that we're following this guidance because we're watching the trends of the moment. Now, I don't know how closely the states are watching the trends. I assume that most of the states have good health control organizations within their state and qualified people. So if they're watching what's going on in their state, but the CDC is watching what's going on across the country, I'm sure there are great differences. We know for a fact that in places like Florida, where they had no mask mandates at all, and Texas and other places, they were overrun by the virus. So maybe it's a good idea that the states take care of their own if they do it sensibly. I think that DeSantis, the governor of Florida, did it sensibly. And I don't think that in Wyoming they did it sensibly. They have the Federalist Society, so a state can do what they want to do. They're not governed 100% by the federal government. So the mandate in New York, which was set in place on December 10th and is set to expire on February 10th, has been not extended. The governor said we're going to let it expire on February 10th because of the declining hospitalizations, and we feel very comfortable that we can lift this now. So Governor Hochul thinks that New York is in good enough shape to do that. That's not what the CDC feels appropriate nationwide. And that's the key word, nationwide. See, the CDC is worried about nationwide, and they are not looking at all of these individual pockets around the country. And they're leaving it up to professionalism of the state governments, which, as I have said many times in the past, is not necessarily, it's not as good as it could be. It could be much better in a lot of states. But those are the people that voted for those people, and so they got to live with them. New York did not change any of the mandates associated with schools, however. And in Illinois, they essentially lifted the same mandates as they did in New York, but that won't go into effect until February 28th. And they are not touching the schools either. The schools are a different animal, and part of the issue, the difference is the fact that many young children haven't been vaccinated yet. Most parts, schools have been pretty safe. Then we've got to get more kids vaccinated, and we've parents on board with that, because that's one of the big holdups in this country. But they're not screaming about getting them vaccinated. And they keep telling us how it's going to affect the children mentally. Well, it's not going to affect the children mentally. I'll tell you what affects the children mentally: the actions of their parents. So if their parents tell the kids that they're going to have problems with masks, then the kids will have problems with masks because they'll listen to their parents. But I don't think most of them have. They will send their kids to school and not say anything and say, be good, wear your mask, listen to the teachers. So the real bottom line on the situation is the schools is that more parents have to get their kids vaccinated. They have to stop this reluctance and think about their rights. Think about the health of their kids. Get them all vaccinated, We got all the kids vaccinated when there was measles and polio and all of that. Without the hullabaloo that's going on now. So these parents should look over their shoulders at history and say, hey, we did a good job in the past vaccinating the kids, and we better do it again. And not all the school districts are acting like New York anyhow. Mask mandates have been lifted in New Jersey and Connecticut in schools, and Oregon and Delaware and Rhode Island announced that they're going to do that soon. So we're seeing many, many states lifting their mandates now. And it's unique when you look at this situation because many of these states are blue states. Now, what does that mean? That probably means that in many other states the mandates never existed, or else they were lifted very early in the red states probably. And that's another piece of the division in this country. We got red states, we got blue states, and we have the federal government. That's an unholy trio in my mind. But I don't want to talk about that today. I just want to take a good look at this pandemic and feel a little bit better that it's slowing down, and maybe pretty soon we'll have much larger attendance at the Y and other places that I go to occasionally. So that's all I want to say today. We still have a conundrum between the CDC and the states, but I can understand the reason why. One is a national problem, and the other is a small universe within that national problem. So I think we can live through this, and I see the signs that things are getting a little bit better. They're not coming to an end so fast, but they're getting a little bit better, and that's a good thing. So I'll leave you with that this morning, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.